All right, welcome to a special episode of our podcast, MKTNG 10, marking our 10-year anniversary of MKTNG, our marketing and PR agency that's been crafting strategies for brands that care for over a decade. Today, I'm excited to chat with Laura Braden, a valuable team member at MKTNG and a longtime friend whose 20 years of expertise in marketing and strategic communications has made a huge impact in our field. Laura's career is full of incredible highlights here in Sacramento and beyond. She currently serves as the Director of Communications for the Campaign on Trauma-Informed Policy and Practice, a role that aligns very closely with our mission here at MKTNG to drive meaningful change through strategic communications. Laura has also left her mark on some pretty defining chapters in the Sacramento region. She served as Senior Director of Communications for the Sacramento Kings, where she steered all the PR and media for business operations. She also served as Deputy Communications Director for Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, crafting state, national, and international campaigns on economics, infrastructure, energy, agricultural policies. Beyond that, she also founded Girls on the Grid, once the preeminent hub for Sacramento's social scene. Laura has worked for Fortune 10 companies, political campaigns, state agencies like the California Medical Associations, nonprofits, and she remains a go-to consultant for organizations and individuals, often in a time of crisis. I first connected with Laura through my role as president of the Social Media Club a long time ago here in Sacramento. This was when Laura was helping to organize a grassroots effort to keep the Kings here in Sacramento. We've remained friends since, and Laura has always remained a source of sharp insights with thoughtful and impactful intentions, which I've always valued. Today, we're diving into how marketing and PR, the landscape has evolved over the past decade and the trends that are shaping our work now and what we see on the horizon. Laura, it's great to have you here, so let's jump in.
Thanks for having me. Lovely intro.
Yeah. Well, thanks. All right. So how you doing today?
Good. Really ready to dive into some of the things that you and I have been chatting offline about for a couple years now. So yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, it's a 10-year anniversary for MKTNG, which is just recently passed. So we're kind of looking back, right? We want to talk about what's happened in 10 years and it's kind of our careers in general, right? We both go back a ways. And I wanted to, we'll get to sort of some new tools, right, that are shaping communications. But what's something what's a relic of your past? Like what's a tool you remember using back when you were first starting in public relations?
Well, as you were so kind to say, I'm approaching my 25th anniversary of being in this world, which is just, wow, that's an entire lifetime that I've been doing this now. So that's pretty surreal. So as you can imagine, back in, 2000, 2001, when I got started, one of my favorite things to highlight for folks, especially the younger folks who don't really use fax machines and that sort of thing. But one major thing that has changed is the way that we even distribute press releases and op-eds. So way back in the day, early 2000s, we would fax press releases to newsrooms one by one. We would take, this was sort of before the internet was ubiquitous. And it was really hard for newspapers didn't quite know what the others were covering necessarily. So you could take one op-ed and we would pitch it at the same time to the Boston Globe, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, all the bigs. And then we would wait for our clip service to send us in the mail a 3-ring binder of that op-ed placement, as well as any other, media placements for the client. And it would be the actual hard copy from the newspaper cut out posted. And then we would take that 3-ring binder and make copies of it and then bind it again and then get it to the client. So as you can imagine, I mean, that's a lot of jobs and a lot of cottage, little small businesses that it's supporting, because there were probably like 4 different vendors in that process. But it would take weeks. It would take forever. And nowadays, you can't get away with that. Everybody wants their own unique content, exclusivity, especially when it comes to things like op-eds. And now, it's instantaneous. When it's live and you've got that link and you can give it to the client, you can make it look pretty as a PDF or just shoot it to them through text. Like, it's just the time from start to finish has become so much more efficient for getting out, your different messages and then delivering those wins to the client. It's wild.
Oh, my gosh. What and that is, whatever, you've been in the game for a minute, but not like that long. Like,
yeah.
Like, how many years were you at that before, like, when did like the 24-hour news cycle, like, that feels like it's been forever, but it really is the last 20 years, right?
Yeah, I would say probably in the last 15 or so. There's probably better research out there that can tell you the day it happened, right? But I would say probably like 12 to 15 years ago, it all started to speed up a little bit. And also in conjunction with the technologies that were coming online, it all started to speed up a little bit. And now we're beyond a 24 news cycle. Now it just feels like everything is breaking news and it's happening all the time and it's impossible to keep up with. I would say the next sort of big leap was social media. I remember being in meetings, this is really going to date me, in 2006, 2007. And the job was to convince clients why they needed to be on social media.
Right.
Right? Like, that seems kind of hard to fathom now, but we would have to, the PowerPoint presentation was to convince them of the utility of social media and what it could do for them. So I was lucky enough, I was part of the team that launched Mayor Kevin Johnson's first social media profiles and managed those. Same goes for Governor Schwarzenegger. I did his, so for him, it was a little bit different because he's such a big, larger than life politician person, but at that time, politician, elected official statesman. And so he had sort of a campaign feed, which was called Join Arnold. And then he had his official governor feed. And that has actually continued on. Gavin Newsom has the California Office of the Governor feed, but then he also has his Gavin Newsom feed. And so I was part of the team with Schwarzenegger putting that on. But even, he, in my opinion, is one of the smartest marketing genius brains on the planet. And I remember even with him, it was sort of like, is this worth the time? How public do I have to be? Like, is it worth the time? Because we were already working on so many big things with him, like videos. And I can get into what his newsroom operation was like, because it kind of happened around that same time. I worked for him 2006 through 2009. And that was a big, heavy time of transition. So even just the way he organized his press office, which if you're interested, I can break that down, was very different. And also looking back now feels totally bulky, because what we did at that time, you can now do with half the staff and half of the vendors and half of it's just way more efficient now.
Do you ever, I do this every once in a while, but it's been on a different level, but do you ever feel like the account structure you described, where there's like, well, there's the personal Arnold Schwarzenegger and then there's the professional, like there's the office of, right? And you had to invent that, right? Nobody knew quite how that was going to work out. And it turns out that the way that you did it is still how it's done. So do you ever look back on stuff like that? You're like, okay, I guess we got it right. Like 20 years later, that's still how they're doing it. So I guess we had sort of the right idea.
Yeah. And some of that was sort of dictated by, laws and legal requirements for disclaiming certain things and what messages you were allowed to push on which channels. And I don't even know if necessarily we invented it, but I do think it was certainly on the cutting edge of what was happening. And I think it did set pace car for a lot of ways that politicians and elected officials communicate. And he's even kept up his own personal channel quite well, right? And has sort of evolved with the times. And, will post amazing, hilarious videos with his pet donkey or with the, Hummer that runs on whatever green, clean fuel that runs on. At one point it was hydrogen. I don't know what it is these days. But so I think he has also mastered post office how to keep that curtain peeled back a little bit to help keep you connected to who he is as a person, which then as he has books or movies or initiatives or policies or positions he wants to take, he's already got a very clear channel to communicate that and get folks engaged.
Yeah. And it feels like he and whatever, I'm assuming he still has people, right? Uh, he's got
And
a
a lot of
pretty
them have been with him, and a lot of them have been with him for decades. Yes, he
right.
definitely has
He's done a
a
good
team still.
job, as you're describing, to peel back the because it's funny how his messages find the audience they're supposed to find, but then all of us see the donkey videos, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's pretty
Yeah.
funny. Um,
Yeah. And that goes to, I think, just a general strategy with social media. It's like it doesn't matter who the client is, the project is, or what the social media feed is about. We found this with Girls on the Grid. So I'll go micro and macro with it. He does that at the macro level. At the micro level, just a local blog that did nothing but cheerlead Sacramento and provide a platform for women to talk about anything they wanted to talk about. We made it one level. When you make it one level bigger than yourself, you're just expanding your reach and your audience engagement, and then you've got them captured so that when you need them to buy tickets to something, or you're promoting new blog content that you want to drive traffic to, your audience is bigger. And so I think we did a really good job of promoting different blogs, promoting other people who were doing similar things to us. It wasn't just about us. And we really did become, I think, one of the primary spaces that was cheerleading Sacramento. Because even at the time, the Sacramento Bee, I mean, this is also quaint, because I think then they had, I don't know, 3 or 4 staff writers who did nothing but restaurant openings and entertainment. Now I think it
mhm,
might be one person, and they're probably also wearing 3 different hats, right? But they couldn't do all of them, but we could. So like we covered every restaurant opening, we covered every nonprofit event, we covered it all because it was a blog, and and for this beautiful decade, Girls on the Grid ran from 2009 to 2019. It was a really, really, I don't know, it was a fun project and great way to promote the city that we love so much. But we were able to do that because our strategy made it bigger than just us and the
right,
blogs and the content we were putting out.
right. It's great because that touches on something I wanted to talk to you about, and that was like what are some things thinking back, to the early days to now. What are some of the principles of effective communication that have remained like absolutely consistent regardless of the
Mhm.
technology or sector? So when I was a governor or NBA team or
Yeah.
CTIP or a client, what are some of those things that have remained the same?
So many, because I think that there is a science and an art to storytelling that is ancient. One of my favorite quotes by Robert McKee is, I don't want to get it wrong. Stories are the currency of human contact, right? So
Oh, yeah.
before we could even write, we gathered around a fire at trade fruit junctions, right? You just got back from Turkey. That was a big
Hmm.
one, right? Or the market, or, what have you. And we shared stories about our lives to inform, hopefully, and help people be a little bit more evolved and wiser, right? We all learn from each other's mistakes, hopefully, through that storytelling. And even when you look at storytelling, like through the Joseph Campbell, hero journey, archetypes, right? Like there's clearly patterns. And even if you look at, so one of the fun things about Jesus is he only told stories. He didn't say do this and do that and A, B, and C. He told parables and he told stories. And there's a great Irish monk that talks a lot about how he did a lot of mission work in Kenya. And so connecting with the tribal leaders there, they connected and saw each other's humanity through parables. And he had this whole theory that if everyone just shared their parables, their stories, it would be way more connective and way more helpful than, again, instructive or directive, right? And so I think those sorts of elements they still ring true today. There's also just sort of some psychological stuff that still rings true. So they say, with communications, it's really about message, messenger, and delivery. And all 3 have to be right to the specific scenario for the message to actually resonate with people, right? Something similar to that is like the whole quote of people won't remember what you tell them to do, they'll remember how you made them feel. And so with things like op-eds or even fact sheets, you've got to provide that human connectivity component to your writing and then back it up with facts and stats. I think that still is a great formula. The third one I would say is meeting people where they're at, really getting to know your audience, because in today's environment, yes, you still have the bigs, whether that's CNN or the New York Times, but everyone's becoming way more niche focused and hyper segmented, right? You can find a Reddit feed on just about any topic. You can find Facebook groups on just about any topic. And so whoever your targeted audiences are, I think taking the extra time to really get to know them, what motivates them, where they live online, and then develop your messaging and tactics specifically to those audiences, I don't think you can overdo that, right? Like, I think the more that you do that and stay on top of it, because things do change and shift, I think that's another sort of principle that, regardless of technology and AI and everything else that's coming online, will always ring true.
Right. Boy, these are great insights, Laura. So let's bring it to the present. One of the things you've one of the feathers in your cap, I don't know, from your career was, doing comms around trying to develop this massive, sports arena in a city center like Sacramento, right? For the Kings. So that's been also a few years ago, but for infrastructure projects, like what we work on, which are often complex and face a lot of public scrutiny, what are some of the biggest communication challenges and opportunities you're seeing right now? Think about stakeholder engagement, building trust, and, technical information being communicated. What are some of the big challenges and opportunities you see for organizations like that?
So I think where folks run into issues when it comes to large scale construction, real estate development, infrastructure is they think too much about once the project is open and not enough about the lead up to that. So, in some cases, they might know that the project they're proposing is going to be controversial. And so then they get a little bit more proactive. But even there, it's usually limited in scope and not as expansive as it can be. And so the way that I sort of think about it is, yes, you need PR. Yes, you need to figure out the marketing piece. Yes, you need to figure out the operations side of things once it's open. But the earlier that you can create a hub for the project, and that's usually through a website, is sort of the foundational piece of that, right? And then at some point in the timeline, you also launch corresponding, social media profiles that you can push that message out to. But phase one for me is always sort of like, okay, what are the community benefits of the project, right? Who are the local vendors and subcontractors that we're going to be hiring? What's the jobs impact? What's the payroll look like? What's the tax revenue going to look like? How many local establishments are going to be brought into the project, right? And so with the Kings, that looked like local art. That looked like local restaurants and bar brands being incorporated. That looked like, hiring local designers and hiring local concrete layer pourers and, all that stuff. But those are all stories to tell. And I'll stick with the Kings because then there's also sort of the human element of it. So there were a lot of people at the Kings that had been working there since day one, since like when it was Arco in the very beginning, right? And we had this really cool janitor who just everybody, we had a janitor and an usher story, and both characters, big personalities, everybody knew them and loved them. They were just well-known entities. And so, one of the ideas we had is like, well, we need to tell their story too, right? So we sat down with them, and it was actually a beautiful piece because these are folks that don't always get a lot of external public recognition, right? But they're the backbone of keeping that building running and operational. And so, we sat down and did a mix of like pictures and sort of them in action, and then like video interviews, and which got turned into blogs, and then a whole bunch of social media posts. And then we took all that and we pitched it to media. And a couple of them, I kept blanking now, but I want to say somebody got featured in the Sacramento Bee, and somebody got a local TV story, right? And so it's thinking about those elements. And then you want to think about the building, the structure of the project itself. So what is that going to do for the community? Again, payroll, tax revenues, that sort of thing. But also, how is it making the city a better place to live and work and play? What problems is it solving, particularly if it comes to infrastructure? And then there's just the construction milestones themselves, right? So you've got topping off ceremonies and groundbreaking ceremonies. And every time you bring on, plumbers aren't there the whole time. They only come in, do their piece, and then they leave. So every time you bring in new staff, new crews, that's a whole new media moment. If nothing else, creating a little bit of content that they can put on their website and their social media to brag about the fact that they're involved in this project. then you're getting their audience, right? And a huge piece of why we do this, a couple of reasons. A, you want to get ahead. The best defense is a proactive offense, right? No, wait, the best offense is a proactive defense. Right. Flip. The best defense is a proactive offense. And so if you can get first to market, and we'll talk about the Coon sculpture as a reason we saw this play out in real time. If you can get the information to people before they have a chance to be upset about it, right? You you can shut down a lot of opposition, a lot of NIMBYism in your backyard. It also can help provide political cover for electeds and policymakers that you're working at, whether that's the local chamber, the mayor, the state legislator, who's ever the audience there. And then also from just a more tactical marketing side, you're gathering emails and personal data from your future customers that you can, right? So that you have those lists on the back end of your CRM already built out, so that when the building opens and you're offering promotions and different events and on and on and on, you've already got a decent list to work with, right? So going back to the Coons thing for a second, and then I'll take a breath. That was something that we saw play out in real time. So the Kings had basically a set budget. I don't remember the numbers. It was something like $4 or $5 million. I might be off, but
It was a lot.
it was a lot of money.
A public art. Yeah.
Right. And it was part of the agreement. It was specifically set aside to be spent on art. Great. So part of what we wanted to do, my gosh, so much local art. Like 80% of that money went to like local art. Well, not 80% of the money. 80% of the art that got represented went to local artists. Some of that got set aside to get a nice, beautiful, flashy, Instagrammable, global piece of art from a guy named Jeff Koons, and who is just like a world-renowned, very well-known. His art is in a lot of different public places as well as private homes. I mean, he's at the sort of top tier.
If you've ever seen a balloon animal piece of art, that's...
Yeah, his art is literally the kind of art that, like, if you're in town in Sacramento and you're a Jeff Koons fan, you're going to go down to the arena specifically just to see that piece of art, right? So we were excited. We thought, like, great, this is elevating the city. Yes, we're providing for all the local, and also here's like a little cherry on top. And people did not agree. There was a very small vocal minority that felt like every single dollar should have gone to local art. And that, frankly, would have been impossible to spend. I'll just say the quiet part out loud. That would have been almost impossible to spend that amount of money on just local art, unless, I don't even know how we would have done that. And there was strategy involved, good strategy, in my opinion, of bringing in a global piece to sort of anchor all the other cool installations and murals and things that were happening. So we very quickly had to scramble and figure out, like, oh my gosh, like, we just didn't anticipate it. We weren't ready. So we had certain fact sheets and things, but it was bigger than that. So part of what we did is we went out and we found, and it was easy to find because we had a lot of public support as well. Like I said, it was a very vocal minority. And first thing we did was identify local artists that were supportive and actually were like thrilled that a piece that scale of Koons was coming to Sacramento. And so we got them briefed on what was happening. We had them write letters to city council. A lot of them came up and showed up to city council and testified. There was also just a lot of misinformation on how the piece was being paid for and why this was even happening. And so we had to put out a lot of very quickly overnight fact sheets, myth facts, all sorts of talking points just to try to correct the record. What was different about this is you're talking about, let's see, what was this, 2014, 2013? So social media is completely online. And that was that was probably 80% of our response, because the media aren't going to report stuff that isn't true. They still have to call someone like me or someone who worked for me, confirm the details, and then they run their story. But on social media, the comments were going crazy, right? And just so much misinformation was being spread. But it's not as insane as it can feel today, because like that just could take off like wildfire today. Back then, it was still sort of, you had to log into, people were on Facebook all day, so it like took longer for these things to spread. So it kind of became hand-to-hand combat. And thank God we had so many local voices who were supportive, because we didn't have to. They were doing it on their own. They were responding to comments. And frankly, that was way better than the official Kings trying to say like, no, that's not true. That's not true. All we did was supply the talking points to everybody and keep everybody posted on what was happening and let them help us correct the record. And it went really well. And it passed, I believe, unanimously, if not almost unanimously. And it's a cool thing in Sacramento. It looks really good. Now it's a piece of the sky. Now you would tell that story and like, why would anybody have a problem with that being here? But
Right.
that's just a good example of how these little things on these big, large scale construction projects can flare up. And if you're not prepared and ready to pivot, and if you haven't done any of that legwork that I mentioned, right? If you don't have a website, if you don't have social media, if you haven't done any sort of community engagement ground game already, you're going to be scrambling and you might not be able to keep up. So yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest thing, is just getting these companies to understand the need for communications and marketing from the get-go. Sometimes, frankly, even before you get approval for the project.
Right. So, well, the Coons thing is a fantastic case study, and it is a beautiful piece. And I'm sure the architects, designers, the fact that it just sort of like sits there right in front of the grand entrance into the Gold One Center. And yeah, less than 100 yards away, you've got the great sort of deconstructed dartboard. I don't know how if it has a name, but
yeah, Gail Hart.
Beautiful piece right down there on L Street. And then on the entrance on that side, you've got the glass balls that Brian Valenzuela designed and installed, which is so cool because that's actually not his medium of choice. He's typically a painter, and I love his work there. But
and then inside we stuffed that building with local art, because Sacramento has a killer local art scene for sure, right?
Yeah.
And so like there was no shortage of talent to work with. That was really the fun part, was sort of, okay, and I'm not actually sure how that process went, but I think essentially it was like they match made spaces to the artists, and then just sort of, they had guardrails, but they were essentially allowed to do whatever they wanted.
I think what helped, this is, you worked with these people, but you had people, the best investors, the owners. Some of them are some of Sacramento's largest art patrons. And so they had the relationships. They wanted to create the stage for the artists to be able to show them off. And it just was a strategy, I think, to your point, wasn't articulated in advance. And so it did catch some people off guard. But kind of broadly, step back on a meta level, what I hear you saying, though, and just in terms of communication, is a lot of organizations, they think, oh, we will communicate about our project when it starts. And what you're saying is, no.
That's right.
Start in advance and be proactive. And so I think a lot of companies make the mistake of thinking, here's how we will play defense. And so by the time they start communicating, they're already on their heels. There's already an offense. And I think your point about storytelling is also is remarkable and well articulated, that that's what people care about. And it's almost a shame, because I love the what you're talking about, like a janitor and just other people, who've been working for the Kings, because it is a storied franchise for Sacramento. I'm trying to remember I need to give him credit, but there's that documentary. It's available on YouTube. That's Small Market, Big Heart. And so anybody can look that up. It's a fantastic documentary, and it just really tells a story about the people who wanted to bring. What's that?
Yeah, I think it was Kenny Johnston or Kenny Johnson, something like that. But yeah, if you Google it, it'll come right up.
I know Kenny. I don't know if he was involved in that. There was. Anyway, I can't.
Yeah, there was several that got made.
I've met this filmmaker. He's a great guy. I can think of his wife's name. I can't think of. Anyhow, so, but yeah, storytelling is so critically important. And what I was saying is it's a missed opportunity. In fact, that often we come upon these great ideas as you had about telling these stories of custodian and other sort of people who wouldn't necessarily get the spotlight. Right. It's too bad. We often think of those in need of storytelling for a project. And oftentimes they make, great opportunities to tell stories when we're not building a new building, just as part of the life of an organization. Hey, here's someone who's been working for us for 20 years,
Well, and through those stories are really great opportunities to demonstrate your culture and your ethos and your mission and your vision, right? So
Yeah.
through storytelling of employees and people affiliated with your organization, you're technically showing off and displaying what that culture is. So yeah, I think it's probably, if I had to break it down, it would be like proactive as possible, especially with the infrastructure. Create the website, get the fact sheets going as early as possible. Then it's full community engagement so that when things happen, you've already got an army of people who love the project and are ready to step up and defend it, right? And then I think it's more mining the project as much as you can from as many angles as you can for those good storytellings. And then I think the last piece would just be sitting down and thinking about all the potential landmines in your community. And those are always going to be case by case. So one example real quick of what we were prepared for, there is a stage in the project where you have to spray water and it's meant to minimize dust. And remember, this is downtown, right? And one of us, I don't know if it was me, I can't remember, but I do remember very vividly in a meeting, somebody was like, people are going to freak out. It's Sacramento. We're a green town, we're a drought town, a green in terms of like people are very eco-friendly and eco-minded, environmentally minded. And then we're also like, this is a drought town, right? In a drought state. And you're going to be spraying water like downtown when people are walking by, like people are not going to understand that. And we knew that. So ahead of time, we literally like put out a press release to the media, right? Because we knew they would see something on social media. We had that vendor, I can't remember who it was, Charter Construction. It was one of the big vendors. We had somebody prepped and primed in case there were media stories, right? And we had social media posts ready to go. We had talking points ready to go. And sure enough, the day that we sprayed water, people started to lose their minds, but we were ready to go. And we were able to educate everybody of like, this is sanctioned. We have to do this. Like, and there's a good reason for it, right? And then it became a nothing burger. The media, I think we got a few, but not a nothing burger, I should say. We've leveraged it for actually positive stories, right? So instead of it being like, what's happening and this is awful and we're wasting water, the stories we got out of it, the social media posts we got out of it were more educational, and here's why. And that also sort of demonstrated, again, good community stewardship of we're educating people proactively, which, saves your project, but also is just a good way to operate in the community. So,
right.
Yeah.
Oh, bravo.
Yeah.
So changing lanes just a little bit, we've been talking about, infrastructure projects. So let's talk a little bit about nonprofits and community service organizations, particularly those that we work with that have a trauma-informed approach to offering their services. How they communicate is like super sensitive. So what are the unique communications challenges that these organizations face today? Like building trust and ensuring their messages are empowering and not re-traumatizing, to the people that they're trying to communicate with. Let's talk about some of those challenges.
Sure. And I think for this, let me focus on organizations that represent patients, clients, community populations who are likely to have experienced trauma in their lives. So taking a step back, it's like the numbers are insane. It's like 70% of all U.S. adults are walking around with, at least one traumatic experience under their belt. And part of it, we can get woo-woo and religious, right? But it's like suffering does seem to be baked into the equation of being a human. And but not everybody is given the right support and resources to navigate whatever adversity comes their way, whether it's a natural disaster or abuse or poverty or what have you, right? So if you think of an organization like Weave, right, that provides a lot of domestic violence and things affiliated with that, homelessness, all sorts of things, right, in our county, in Sacramento County, the population, the people that they work with and the people that they serve are very likely to have encountered something traumatic. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there, right? And so that really behooves the organization to communicate in a very different way than, say, like Nike or Coca-Cola would be able to. Although next, I can sort of extrapolate why companies like that should also be following this, right? But so that really comes into play in a couple different ways. One of the most obvious is for organizations like that, storytelling of demonstrating case studies, testimonials, people that they've helped, people who have come through their programs, right? Like that's a really big piece to securing grants and media coverage and donations and funders and that sort of thing. And there's an entire literature book, podcast videos just around that piece of what we're talking about, because folks really need to have voice and choice and empowerment when they tell their stories, when they tell their stories of survival, when they tell their stories of trauma, of resilience, of whatever it is. And so what does that look like? That looks like, they need to understand at the get-go, when you ask them, hey, can we tell your story? You need to come prepared with a couple of things. Here's how we're going to record your story, and here's how we're going to use your story. Here's the purpose of it, right? We're going to use it for donations and fundraising. We're going to use it for marketing. We want to tell it on our website. You want to get as specific as possible and probably as broad as possible, just so you get as much buy-in from them, because some folks may just want to tell their story as a podcast. Some folks may just want to be a social media caption, and you got to give them the choice to do that. And then it comes down to even how you capture their story. So, on the more extreme side of things, if you have the most ideal way of doing things is letting them dictate the location, they might feel more comfortable sharing their story in their home. They might not want to do it at your office or at a public coffee shop, right? So letting them choose the location, letting them cancel 20 minutes before because they woke up and they're like, I can't tell this story today. Like, I'm not, right? So giving them the choice to even just back out, frankly, giving them the choice to back out at any point of the process and not making them feel awful for that, right? Sending the questions to them ahead of time. And again, when you send them, if there's anything on here that you don't like, if there's anything on here you want me to add, like, we're doing this together. Co-creation is what we call it, right? And then once that piece of content gets created, it's sending it back to them and saying, okay, review time. Here's the deadline, but if you need more time, please take it, right? And if you don't like it, if you want to reshoot it, like, again, just giving them total sort of ownership over it. And then it's just keeping in touch with them. So once the content gets published, I usually send that person a note saying, hey, it's live. Here's the link. We can make certain edits. Like Twitter, you can't edit unless you've got the profile, but like, so just break down the different options even there. And then I even tell folks, it doesn't matter if it's a decade later. If you want to read, let's say you had that as part of a donation campaign, but you're like, oh, I want this now to live on my website, and it's been 2 months, 2 years, you still need to contact that person and say, hey, we would now like to use your story this way. Here's where it'll live, link, link, link. Are you okay with it? Right. So I think that's probably like the number 1, 2, and 3 thing I always tell people is, as you're sharing these stories, really making sure that the people that with lived experience aren't feeling like they're being exploited, and you're not setting it up so that they feel re-traumatized from the experience itself. Then I think the second thing would be the framing of the stories is also really important. And this can cascade out into the optics that you use with your videos and social media. So you never want to communicate from a place of fear or scarcity, right? So in a newsletter, you don't want to ever say, vets are killing themselves every 10 seconds. And so, like, if we don't do something, this is going to happen, right? Like, you want to operate from hey, this is happening in our community, and here's how you can help, right? You always want to put it in a strengths-based framing versus fun. And this shows up most in fundraising, right? But you never want to mess from a place of scarcity or fear. I've had people send me videos trying to get folks to sign up for a child advocacy piece, and the imagery they're using in the videos are of like hurt kids, hunched over, kids crying on their pillow, and it's like, no. You want to show the world that you wish to create through the action that you're asking of people, right? So use ideal imagery, use hopeful imagery, use action-oriented imagery. I think that would be the biggest second piece. And then a third one, again, really knowing your audience and really knowing your community, because even among the unhoused, maybe you only work with women and children, and that's going to look very different than if you're working with more immigrant groups, right? And so you just need to be sort of very aware of the populations that you serve. And I even go so far, it's a tactic that works with a lot of organizations where they'll create almost like an informal advisory council. I did this with the foster youth group because, those kids, they age out at 18? And once they're out of the system, the stats don't look good. Like, there's just not a ton of support and services and resources for kids once they age out of the system. And so this foster agency was trying to create that, but then also figure out where they could grow and improve within their own system. So what did they do? Pretty brilliant. They created 2 different youth advisory groups, one of kids currently in the program and one of kids who had graduated. And they were sort of focus groups for all of their ideas, but they also, asked them, like, what did you hate about being a foster youth in our program? Like, how did the onboarding go? Could the court visitations have gone better? What could we have provided to you, that first night in that new home? Those sorts of things, right? And then of course, post exiting the system, what is it you need most, right? And so there's so often, I'm sure you've seen it too, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this have too. It's like the RFP gets issued, a firm lands the contract. They create this beautiful PSA brand, PSA policy issues-based awareness campaign for some department or agency in the state. It gets sent to the population that it's meant for, and it lands flat because no one stage in the process ask the people who are meant to consume this information if it even resonates with them or if it's even what they need. So I think that's the third thing is I always recommend to people of like, how much can you bring in your populations that you serve to get that good feedback? And through that, what's funny, especially with the foster youth example, they ended up, oh my gosh, a lot of those kids ended up becoming spokespeople, right? And got more involved in the organization and were telling their story. Like they were apt spokespeople with really compelling testimonials, and they felt they were happy to do it because they felt like they were part of the project and part of the organization versus just being dictated to.
You're touching on the something I really wanted to ask you about, because we often get this. Like you and I have both consulted. Something that comes to mind is an organization we've consulted with that deals with the homeless, and their big gripe was, when people don't let us use their photos in our advertising, it makes it really hard, to like those advertisements are not very successful, and it was sort of a tough moment to tell them you shouldn't be using any like people's photos in your advertisements and social media content, and they were really bummed. It was just like, oh, really? Like, no, you're like really taking all the agency away from people who you're serving, and there's just all sorts, it's privacy and also all these issues. So
yeah,
you've touched on this a little bit, but like, what are some tactics? Like, I know because you've talked about it previously about if it bleeds, it leads, and all these things that are common when we're using a marketing mindset, but the trauma-informed approach is almost completely like flipped. So what are some proactive communications, trauma-informed approaches that can be empowering for the nonprofits to think through and use as they're trying to be successful in their cause?
Yeah. Gosh, that's really going to vary based on what the organization is. But let me throw out a few examples. So let me touch upon something that you just said. So I think the more that you can bake the ask into the process earlier, the better off you're going to be. But also it's situational. So imagine you are a woman having some economic challenges and you show up at a job fair, or you show up at even just one of these events where they will help you, pick out suits and help your resume and do some like informational interviews. Well, imagine you show up to that community event and one of the first things you see is somebody with video camera wanting to talk to you about your story. Are you going to feel good about even going? Like I would bolt out the door, right? I mean, maybe not. Some people aren't going to respond that way, but I would be like, no, I don't. Like, I'm here to better my life. I'm not here to like talk to you about how, what a hard time I'm going through. Right. And so like in that kind of case, like I wouldn't have that person there, period. I wouldn't worry about getting pictures of the job fair or the training. And if you do, again, there's still ways to do it. You still have to get people to sign off on it, sign waivers, et cetera. But maybe you only take pictures from the back of the room so that the picture is of the back of heads and whoever's speaking. Right. So that there's like anonymity there. So I think you have to pick your moment. I think the timing has to be right when you ask for those sorts of things. I did something similar for a funeral home. This is one of the more random projects I got to work on, but they live and die by referrals. But it's like, at what part of this grief process do you ask the family who's grieving their loved one to give you a testimonial, right? That was a huge pain point. And so what we sort of did was like, we baked it into the whole thing, and we made it more of like an opt out of, we would like, if you would not like to submit a testimonial or a review of our service, like click this box so we don't ask you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if they didn't click that box, then the employee like sort of had a little bit more free reign of when to bring it up with them. Right. Going back over to the nonprofit side, I think it's for larger campaigns, a couple ways that I would do it. I would look at in-house people. So a lot of times the staff that work at these places have also gone through something similar. Right. That's another sort of general human thing about us, is that once we go through something really awful and make meaning of it, we want to turn around and help spread that meaning to others who are in similar situations. And so you find in a lot of these environments, the staff that are working there also have lived experience, right? So I would start there, because they're going to be hopefully more interested in participating. But again, it's a, hi, would you like to do this? Not a, this is required part of your job, because that's also probably illegal in California. I'm going to go with it. Definitely illegal in California. So you start there. Then all organizations have donors and volunteers that also probably have lived experience in that space. That's why they're there. And again, they're probably, hopefully, a little bit further on in their healing journey, and now are giving back to the organization through volunteering and donations. So they may be in a better place, mentally, spiritually, all of it, to share that story, right? And so you see what sort of talent exists there. And then I'd move on to like the graduates of the program, folks that are still supportive, folks that you're still in communication with, that sort of thing. And then that last tier would be just the John Q citizen, patients, clients, people that are coming through your door that you're serving every day. And there it's trickier. That is sort of, that becomes really case by case of what the organization looks like. You can pre-program that into your process so that they're asked, but really for something like that, I would actually wait until they're more to like the graduate stage of things, because somebody who's in active healing or an active rebuilding of their life, don't ask them to share their story yet, unless you can tell and you've got that dynamic and they really want to. Because there are some people who are like, no. The quote is, I almost died in silence, so I'm healing loudly, right? Like there are a lot of people who want to share their story. So you have to just sort of gauge that. But that's hard. That last group that I mentioned is kind of the trickier one, because again, you don't want to exploit or re-traumatize anybody that isn't ready.
Right. Wow, these are all like, very powerful insights into, how these organizations need to communicate and build trust. Yeah, I'm really imagining this, like the anecdote you said of like, someone arriving to, a job fair or whatever, and there's someone with a camera there. And I think it, puts undue pressure on them, right? Like it feels like a quick quid pro quo. Like, oh, in order for me to get a free jacket, I need to like be exploited by video camera, like, right? It creates this sense of obligation. Like, if you want the jacket, you got to get your, you got to be on Facebook.
That's right. And it's funny because with some populations, it's so obvious. You would never do that at a domestic violence event. You would never do that at a child adoption event or a refugee event, right? So you shouldn't do it for any other population that has likely been through trauma and is actively healing. It's the dangers
of like, again, in a different sector. We're telling clients, like, you need to be the media. You need to, you've got to capture all the stuff and tell the stories. And so, oftentimes meeting with, good intentions, a nonprofit might go, oh, we've got to have a video guy at the thing and take lots of pictures and tell all the stories. And oftentimes it's just not the right place. And a lot of organizations haven't come around to that thinking. So also making our next pivot, no conversation. Let's talk about the future a little bit. We're at a really interesting moment in comms and technology. It's funny because you and I both lived through the first one, right? Like early in our careers, social media just like was taking over comms and marketing. And now we're at this moment where it's AI, right? And we can see it coming. We don't yet entirely know what it means or how it's going to impact us, although we can see a little bit. How do you see AI realistically impacting, strategic comms in the next 5 years, like beyond, content creation, right? Like, hey, make me 500 photos or whatever. We see that, BS marketed to us on a daily basis. Where do you see the strategic value for AI in our industry serving our clients?
Yeah. So let me talk about AI, but then I want to talk about decentralization too. So with AI, I was a pretty early adopter. I am obsessed. I use AI every single day with every single one of my clients. It saves me untold hours of time of work. And I don't have any clients that have the work it's producing is good. I don't have we're not on version 17 of the press release, right? Like I'm getting things through the approval process faster because what it's spitting out is better. And it's, again, saving my time so that I don't have to take on less clients or go out and hire more people or that sort of thing. So for folks like us, it's tricky because I think there's going to be communicators that focus really hard on the graphic design piece of AI. I think there's going to be people who focus on the video creation side of AI. I'm right now focused more on, I use AI specifically for ideation, strategy, and for writing. And so I'll dive into that a little bit because I think so far so good. We're still needed. Humans are still 100% relevant to this process. I don't know if AI will ever get here, but it is not a copy paste exercise. You cannot just put in a prompt, copy paste what it gives you and you're done. That's not what we're talking about. And I'm sure, well, let me back. There are lots of people who do it that way. I think that's going to be an unintended consequence of AI is that the amount of just crap content that's out there is going to drastically go up, right? And you've already seen search engines try to accommodate for that and rank natural language versus over anything they can tell was made on AI on your website. So they're trying to sort of accommodate for that. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of crap content out there, but not what we're creating. For people, I think this is like a sweet spot. I think like for people like us who have 15 plus years of experience, it's a really, really, really exciting time. And hopefully it doesn't bite us on the ass and we're all unemployed in 5 years. Because yeah. And so what I mean by that is you're still getting my brain, you're still getting my ideas, you're still getting my strategy, you're still getting all of my experience to bear. But now, instead of spending 8 hours on a press release or an op-ed, don't take that long, but you know what I mean. Instead of spending hours on the op-ed or press release, I now spend that time on setting up the AI agent. So I use Claude AI. I love it because the project side of things, I create a project for each client and I'm able to put in the brand voice. I'm able to put in all the different instructions and prompts of generally speaking what it needs to do. And then I'm able to upload all sorts of resource material, fact sheets, talking points, media coverage. Claude can now scan websites. So now I can put all that in. I can put in our competitors. So that now I've basically created an AI agent, although they can get even more sophisticated. What I'm explaining is what anybody off the street can do. It's about to get even crazier in terms of automation and the types of influencers that are going to actually be made. I can talk about that in a second. But anyway, sticking to more like the content ideation side. And so now what I'll do is I'll spend an hour on the prompt, right, and I'll spend an hour conversing with it. Because one of the life hacks with any AI tool is, okay, now before you start your work, ask me questions to improve this prompt to improve your work. Right. So then you can have a little bit and they'll push back on things it's not clear on. And then I end up spending another hour editing it, zhuzhing it, putting it back into the voice. It's not always going to get things right. And then you have to go and fact check anything fact-based because it will hallucinate. It will create statistics that aren't real. The life hack there is you ask it to cite its sources with the URL, and that helps cut down on that. But anyway, so you got to do that. So it's still my work. It's just been enhanced by this fake junior employee that I pre-programmed to do it, right? So in that way, I think it's totally revolutionized. And also, like, there's plenty of times where I hate what it gives me. But for whatever reason, for my brain, it is easier for me to redo an entirely new press release than start out with that blank sheet of paper, right? So for me, I'm a strong writer, and I'm also, I think, an even stronger editor and producer. So if I can just get any draft in front of me, it all of a sudden becomes way more clear of like, this is all wrong, and now I know what it needs to be, right? And so now we're off to the races. So yeah, I think AI is really going to change the game, allowing people to take more clients and maybe even charge less for the clients that they are taking, right? And maybe it's even going to allow people to expand the types of services they offer. I've always been somebody that if a client has another challenge and I don't maybe know what to do, I'm still going to try to figure it out for them as long as it's still within my lane. And I even find that that's really helpful with AI. So what I mean by that is they want to add a specific feature or process to their website, and I built the website for them, but what they're asking me to do, I've never done. I'll go to Claude AI and say, you're an expert in Wix. I need to build the following tool. Now tell me step by step, like I'm an eighth grader, how to do it. Right? And so now, so instead of spending 15 hours of research, messing it up, fixing it, trying it again, now I know like step 1, step 2, step 3. So I think that's also going to be a huge tool for us. And then just the ideation part of it's really, really fun. It will come up with some wild ideas that just, again, help you expand your own thinking a little bit and get out of your own way because, you know, there's a science to this and there's an art. And sometimes the science part of it can become formulaic of like, oh, I'm writing the 12th press release on this topic. And AI also, I think, helps keep it fresh and helps keep you fresh. Now, I don't know if you're 22 years old, and you're a communicator or marketer and you're just starting these tools. I would love to do a side-by-side of give me and a 22-year-old the same assignment and see what the work product is. Because I don't know if it's ego or not, or truth, but I don't know if theirs would be as good as mine because, again, I'm able to write better prompts based on the experiences that I've had and the expertise I've gathered, right? So that's why I say, I think for like mid to senior folks, this is a really exciting moment to make your day go easier. But I don't know. I think for the junior folks, I think there's still, you still need that real world experience. And then I think maybe the calculation for you is that you get really good at knowing how to talk to the AI programs that you're using so that you can help companies integrate and like, I think that's your sweet spot there.
Right. No, I mean, honestly, I think your bet for one, you would clearly do better than a 22-year-old, even a 25-year-old. It's in the prompt writing, and even if the junior staff person, that's our stalking horse here, is smart. You have the experience. Like to me, like when I'm prompting, it's not like, hey, take this and do this with it, right? You really are like. It's the instruction if you were instructing an intern, you would say, hey, I need you to write this, be sure to include A, B, C, and D, right? Like, because you're like, here are the most salient things that I need to make sure are included in this project. And that's part of the prompting process is, hey, I need you to take, everything that's on this website, but here's what I need is I need you to pay special attention to these things, because these are my priorities as a professional. I want to make sure these are highlighted, included, called out, punctuated, whatever. And that's part of your expertise is knowing that the output is good, but you've got to, what the input is, right? What are you telling the AI to include as its inputs so you get the right outputs? And as far as hallucinating, I mean, I have an example I won't share for the podcast, but I've gotten some advice from AI in the last 6 weeks. I'll just say that was completely made up, right? Just completely fabricated, hallucinated. I recommend that you take this course of action, and I was like, "Are you sure? Is that legal?" No, it was like completely illegal. And I will say a lawyer was involved. So like I was consulting with a lawyer and I was like, oh, Grok told me not to throw Grok under the bus. Grok recommended this course of action. He was like, no, that's not a thing. Like that's completely against the law. So anyway, so yeah, caution.
Well, and thankfully the humans are still needed, right?
Right.
And then I think the other sort of benefit, and then I'll go into the big wild card of like what comes next, right? But I think the other benefit is it's democratized communications even more, similar to what social media did. Now you've got your Twitter feed where you can say whatever you want. You don't have to wait for the Sacramento Bee to cover you, right? You've got a direct pipeline to your people. This has democratized communications and marketing because now it's easier to offer new things to clients. So in our case, podcasting 2 or 3 years ago used to be a very time-consuming, expensive thing. And now we're using Podcastle, right? There's Script, there's all these other tools where very quickly you can record, have transcripts, then you feed that transcript to make a blog, to make the social media post, to make the email newsletter, blah, 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 blah. And so now we're able to do things faster and cheaper for our clients, right? And so then that increases your ability to communicate in new and more thoughtful ways, particularly with video and podcasting, which is becoming, it's funny. It's like people either want it in 8 seconds or they want it in 3 hours.
Right.
So that's kind of the new game, right? And that goes to my point, before we move off AI too far, but I do want to touch on decentralization of media, because I think that's another big piece that's been happening in the last few years, where now it's like, okay, cool, be in the Washington Post, be on CNN, but who cares how many people are going to actually see it, right? If your true audience is unicorn aficionados in Utah, they have a blog, they have a TikTok, they have a YouTube, and you can write. And so again, like this goes back to my earlier comment of the better you know your audiences and who you're trying to target, you don't have to work with the big guys anymore and only get 2 sentences in a story. You can, there's more opportunity to play. But then switching back to AI real quick, I think the big question mark in my mind is what comes next. I think some of the most exciting and most surreal things are happening on the video side of things on these AI influencers. And I think one of my predictions is that there's going to be, and I'm trying to figure out like how to do this for myself, but it's so easy now to create an avatar. And that be the face of whatever it is your company is or your blog is or your Instagram feed is, right? And so really honing in on that character. And I think those are going to become I think those are going to become assets, right? I think they're going to become almost think like a Disney character. It's going to be AI influencers. It's not going to be social media, and it's not going to be human being influencers anymore, at least not as much. And so I think, it remains to be seen what comes next with AI, because as we've talked a lot about, it's hard to keep up. If you don't like Opus AI, well, then you've got CapCut and 30 other competitors, and tomorrow there'll be another. The winners and losers within the industry haven't shuffled out yet, right? There are a million text to video options. There are a million picture photo editors, right? There's all sorts of companies that are flying around right now, and so I have my favorites, but it's hard to keep up because every day I feel like there's a new AI tool, company, service that you can utilize. And thanks for the free trials, but it's hard to keep up.
It is funny, and it's a cautionary tale almost to people out there, because I still am a fan of X.com, formerly Twitter. And every day I'm on Twitter, I see someone, because I'm the target market for this messaging, is, the AI race is dead. Now, Anthropic and Claude has just dropped a new model and blah, 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 blah. It does it, and everything else is obsolete. And I'm like, no, it's not, because every other tool, frankly, already communicates better than the 22-year-old thing. They're saying, whatever, they're almost at the doctor level or whatever. But the tools we're already using today in Laura are revolutionizing how we do our work, and as they continue to get better and better and better and better, I guess the answer is nothing's obsolete. Nothing's been made obsolete. The tools you're using today that are AI capable are probably heads above anything you would have found or even existed 5 years ago. And things will continue to iterate and get better. You should always look for, things that are better, faster than what you're using now, but don't always go for the next shiny object, because there's also going to be a lot of flashes in the pan. And kind of to your point, although Google is definitely in the race, and we use Google every day, the Gemini product, there is not yet a Google of AI who owns the landscape, right? There's a handful of market leaders and they're all making, great products, but there's not a de facto
there's no clear
number one.
winners yet.
Right.
No, we don't have like the established like Ford and Target and Coca-Cola of AI companies yet, right? You've got a few clear winners, but anything's possible. Because remember, a couple of months ago, everybody was freaking out when DeepSeek dropped.
Yes.
Because it was right, and it's a great program. I use it for a lot of research stuff too. So yeah, it sort of remains to be seen how all of this is going to play out. And I would also encourage people, particularly creatives, of thinking about like, how can I create faceless, nameless revenue streams from this? So for example, let's say you really are interested in the Sacramento Kings. That's your jam. Cool. There's no reason why, and I see this, I follow a bunch, it seems to be a very like popular X thing where you take a given piece of news. So like, let's say a SACB article about a coaching hiring decision or whatever. You feed that through Claude AI, ChatGPT, whatever. You say, come up with a 6 or 7 Twitter X. I can't call it X. It's Twitter. All right. An X thread highlighting this article, right? Like make it SEO, because like now I feel like a lot of social media platforms are turning more to just searches versus hashtags to find content, right? So make sure that it hits all the different search functions. And then, so now you've got your 6 tweets, and then you can go schedule those, and it becomes like a long thread. And at the bottom, it has like a link back to your website or your podcast or your blog or whatever the source material is. And it's almost like you become your own sort of news source for a very, very niche topic, right? And over time, you can monetize that, and you don't have to put your face on it. You don't have to put your name on it. So much of it is automated and set and forget. But we already know how to do this for clients. And so my big challenge in the last couple of years, and I always encourage others, is like, think about what you do for your clients and try to do it for yourself as well. Because we know how to set these things up for clients. So why aren't we doing it for our niche, weird things that we love talking about, trying to create a little bit of money off that? Because I think there's so much opportunity. Again, everybody's so niche. You can find whatever you're interested in. There is a world on the internet that is organized around that, right? And so there's so much opportunity, but it just remains to be seen how all this is going to sort out, because there is this sort of problems with AI. Number one, energy usage, right? California is a state where you have to beg people to turn off their air conditioners, and now we're trying to electrify the fleets in our vehicles, and like, can the grid actually handle this? And AI takes up more energy than anything. And then quantum computing, haven't talked about quantum computing. That's on the heel. That's coming up close to AI. And that's going to require a tremendous amount of energy. So Sacramento, I think, is starting to look at that, but I don't think it's left out of the discussion way too much, in my opinion, is like the actual energy usage. We're going to have to fully maximize the potential of AI for society. We're going to obviously have to solve the energy problem. And then I would say the other issue of it is just the ethical use of it, right? And every time you search for something or every time you ask it for something, it's just pulling from what already exists. Well, that's work. That's time and effort and hours, especially when you talk about the art side of things, right? Like it didn't just generate a painting for you out of nothing. It's based on actual work that's on the internet. So that's also sort of an unfortunate piece of this, is what's going to happen to those folks, right? I know for a fact I am charging people less because of how much I'm able to use AI. I know for a fact that I'm not hiring as many freelancers and outsourcing as much, right? And so you can imagine a firm. Well, first off, I think PR firms with 20 people are going away, because like the days of, I was on a conference call the other day with a traditional big PR firm, and they had 6 staff people on the call.
Oh yeah, of course.
Only 2 talked, but all of them were charging their hourly time to that class. So anyway, just insane that's so antiquated. They're going to get pushed out of the market pretty quick if they keep doing it that way. But I do think there is going to be a conflation. There's going to be a contracting in our world of not as many people are going to need to be hired. And so how do you sort that out? Or there could be a situation where every major firm or company now has an AI communications person, right? Who is like the wrangler of AI for the team. and they figure out the best programs and the best processes. I mean, like almost like a website manager. It's now like the AI manager. So there could also be some jobs that come out of this too. So I don't know. It's the fear factor of, are we training our replacements? Is I don't know the answer to that. I sure hope not. And or right, or can I pivot away fast enough to something new that makes me
I know. And I take up, I'm trying to become a basket weaver on the weekends or whatever,
Well, that's one of, I don't know if you follow Gary Vee, but that's one of his predictions. And I think it's right, where he's saying that like we're reaching this critical threshold with technology where now you're going to find more and more premium luxury niche experiences in real life. He was like, he predicted in 5 years, you're going to be able to hire people to go on walks with you because we're just going to be starved.
I'm going to start that business right now.
Right? Like if you know how to paint, you're going to be, there's going to be real money to be made by hosting 4, 5, 6 people in your home, your community center, whatever. Now, of course, there's privacy and safety issues to what we're talking about. Like those, how do you vet the person you're going to go for a walk with to make sure you're safe? But like, we'll figure that out. But I think his point is like, there is going to be a pendulum shift back to, we will pay a premium to connect with each other in person because it's all becoming Zoom, Teams focus.
You're telling me the future of business is those mall places. I think they're typically in malls. I used to have a client in this space, but it'll be the business where it's typically ladies get together and they drink wine and paint, right? Isn't that?
Yes. Extrapolate that.
Yeah,
across
like that's 10, 15-year-old business. But now you're saying like that's the future, is like getting people together for curated, high touch, experiential experiences. Yeah. That's definitely the wrong AI. Fix that post.
So I think it's going to be these fake AI influencers that become characters that people attach to. Right. And so then that avatar becomes an asset, just like anything else that you can leverage in a million ways. It's going to be the hand-to-hand IRL, real touch points. And I think the third one that AI is going to probably produce is, and this is also, I want to give it to Gary Vee too. He called this a few years ago and I'm already starting to see it, where everyone can become their own reality show. So think if you're a hairstylist in a salon and you just set up a little cam, and all you do is, and it's like Truman Show, it's just playing all day and people get to watch you do your consultations and the before and afters and the makeovers and stuff. And they also get to hear you gossip and talk trash about whatever's going on. And I'm already seeing that, like that's already happening. And there's already a few, there's one guy that I love. He builds like cabins in the woods in the middle of nowhere. And it's so, I don't know, there must be like an ASMR component to it, but it's so relaxing and soothing and he's explaining what he's doing. And so you're learning a little bit, but like he doesn't have a show on HGTV. He just has a little webcam set up and there's a million ways to monetize that. Potential books, right? Like there, you could just go off on that. So I think that'll also be a third way that people can make money. And that's using technology and leveraging AI to be able to get it out to the masses and find your people that are interested in that.
Yeah. I love it. Well, we've mined so many subjects. We're gonna have to put a pin in this because we'll save some stuff for future conversations and episodes, because this has been a lot of fun. So thank you for joining me for a 10th anniversary MKTNG podcast. Thank you, first of all, for just being a part of our team. It's just
thank you for having me on the team. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pleasure to know you, and we did try for many years to look for opportunities to work together, and I'm so happy we found a place for you here, and I love the work we do together, and I value your expertise and all the things you've shared here is what gets baked into the work that we do with our clients. It's a pleasure for me, and I think for our team, to work with you and to deliver, our tagline at MKTNG is for brands who care, and we like working with companies that have a purpose, right? Whether they're trying to make infrastructure bigger, better, faster, stronger, or they're trauma informed, community organizations trying to deliver, care in a their services in a compassionate way that serves their clients. I think you have a unique perspective into how to help those organizations communicate better. So anyway, thank you again for joining
Thank
me and
you.
joining MKTNG and for bringing this great perspective you have to our organization, to our clients.
Awesome. Let's
All
keep it
right.
going.
Thanks. We will. All right. Thanks.